What's up, Coachable family? Welcome back to the Coachable podcast. I'm your host, Tori Gordon, and today we are in the studio with Tanner Chidester. We're going to learn all about how he built an 8-figure online business. It moved from just teaching other people how to become the best shape and in the best shape of their lives to actually teaching other online business owners and entrepreneurs how they can scale their businesses as well. And I know so many of you have side hustles, have online businesses, have service-based offers that you want to blow up. And this is the guy to help you do it. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You said the last name absolutely perfect.
Hell yeah.
It's perfect. I loved it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So I've heard a lot about you over the last few years. I started my own personal business in 2019, and like many of us, didn't know what the fuck I was doing, was learning trial and error. And I like to be really honest on the show. The reason I built this podcast is, one, it's all about being coachable. It's being teachable. It's like learning how to do things better. And I want to do that in every area of my life, including and definitely in business. So I, have to recognize I don't know it all. There's a lot for me to learn. And then I try to get around people who are doing it at the level I want to be doing it and learn from them. So that's kind of like my methodology. But this show is also about helping people build lives and businesses that feel as good on the inside as they look on the outside. Because it's kind of shitty if you've got a life that looks really, really good, but internally you're kind of at war with yourself, you're in conflict with yourself. So I want to, as somebody who's really exceeding at the highest levels and doing business in ways that many people just dream of, the first question I want to ask you is, does it feel as good as it looks?
Such a loaded question.
Yeah.
It did for a while. So when I started business, I don't know if you probably know Billie Jean. Of course, everyone knows Billie Jean. So I remember seeing an ad of Billie Jean, and he was I think he was at his old San Diego house, and he was doing, why does a doctor make more than a janitor? And I remember seeing that and thinking, man, if this guy can do it, I can do it. It wasn't a derogatory way. I never even thought that these people were lying. It's so interesting how so many people just think everyone's lying. I just thought, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I went on a mission to make $1 million in a month, and I just put my head down, and 18 months later, essentially when I started my business, I had done it. And it did feel really good that day. But I remember the very next day, I started thinking really deeply about, man, so what's next? Because that had been my whole mission since I started the company. And I started realizing, most people really didn't care. I remember telling people, they came over, we had this big party, and I was super stoked, and they're like, yeah, congrats. And that was it. And I was like, man, I just gave 2 years of my life every single day almost to make this happen. And I had a really nice place. I had a bunch of cars. I was dating a lot, and, I just didn't feel very happy. And so I started going on, kind of trying to figure out the meaning of life. And I started going down that rabbit hole and started asking a bunch of questions. And I think for me, what really helped is, one of my friends, Alex, he would just tell me, he's like, hey, does there need to be a massive meaning? I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. And he's like, okay. And you have to have a reason that you like working, because a lot of times what happens is people, you get there and they say, oh, you don't need to work as much. You don't need to do this. And I think I came to the conclusion that I do really enjoy work outside of just making the money. And I think the money was the objective because I was poor at the time. But once I made all the money, I really had to figure out, well, why am I doing this if I don't need the money anymore? And that was kind of a lot of introspection, but I think it is now. I think I really am enjoying the place I'm at now. A year or two ago, probably not. Even 6 months ago, maybe not, because I went and traveled the world, and I stepped out of my business for about 6 months and just did whatever I wanted to do. And I think I actually felt the most miserable during those 6 months, because it was all selfish versus selfless. So I think a lot of times when people feel miserable, it's just because they're constantly thinking about themselves. And I think a lot of your problems actually will be solved just trying to help others. And ironically, by helping others, you get more of what you want. Kind of those selfish things that you think will make you happy that they usually don't, but you'll actually get those because by helping other people, they want to kind of, reciprocity, like they want to give back. So that was a little bit of a loaded answer, but I think now I am, but in the past there were definitely moments where how it looked was not how it was.
For sure. And I think that's so relatable. And what you were just saying about even the last 6 months where you took time off and went and did things for yourself. There was a point in my life when I was in my mid to late 20s, I was dating a guy that played professional baseball. We had moved across country. He was playing for the Padres at the time. We lived in a beautiful penthouse apartment. I quit my job. I was living the life I thought I wanted. That so many people I know looked at me and was like, wow, like she's so lucky. And in many ways I was, very privileged, very blessed. And he was living out his dream, doing exactly what he loved. And I had not yet found what I loved. And so I gave up. I was doing really well in corporate, but gave that up to go travel and had this life that looked amazing. But like you, I was more depressed at that time than I'd ever been. And I remember one day walking outside, feeling the sun on my face and like bursting into tears and thinking, okay, something's off. Like I shouldn't feel this way. But this is trying to tell me something. And for me, because I didn't have any quote unquote responsibilities, no one cared what time I woke up in the morning. I was not having to show up and be responsible for a team or a business or doing any kind of job because I had full flexibility and freedom in my life. I wasn't accountable to anything, but I also lost all of my purpose. And I had to go on a similar journey of being like, what is important? What's worth getting up every day and putting my time and energy into? And I needed to go through that for me to realize everything that looks really good doesn't always feel good. So I actually ended that relationship and after that ended up starting my business a couple years later because I needed to find something for me that mattered enough for me to care, not because I needed to get to a certain place or like I needed to achieve a certain thing, but I needed to feel a certain feeling. And there was a long road to get there, but I think it's important to be honest with people about what it actually takes to get to that point. And so a lot of people look at you probably, I know I have it before I even knew who you were. Like I saw your content everywhere. It was popping up and I was like, yo, this guy's like really doing it. And I think people see you on the mountaintop and they just assume, oh, like he got lucky or he probably comes from a wealthy family or who knows.
That is a funny one.
But they don't see the sacrifices that you've had to make to get where you want to, like where you are. So I'd love to hear like over the last several years, like what has that actually looked like for you? What sacrifices have you made to get to the point that you're at?
Yeah. So, honestly, the beginning, I made the most sacrifices. So I wanted to play in the National Football League, American football for anyone who's not in America. But that was my whole mission from about 12 to 22. So I got bullied as a young kid. I started lifting weights because of that. I started realizing, oh man, people are complimenting me. The girls like me now. The guys stopped messing with me. I started really excelling in sports. So 12 to 22, that was my whole life. The way I attack business now is what I did for sports for about 10 years. And then when that ended, I had a bunch of injuries. I probably wasn't good enough to go pro. I had to figure out what the next thing was. And I had a mentor who had me drop out. I had a 3.9 GPA. I just got accepted into Texas A&M's engineering program, which is extremely difficult. And he convinced me to drop out. And I remember at the time, everyone, I thought it was stupid. I was questioning myself and he's like, no, you're good. But everyone, including myself, just thought I was dumb. I remember I lost my girlfriend. Her mom thought I was very dumb. My family was not really, they didn't say not to do it, but they were like, good luck. So from 22 to 25, I worked at my mentor's. He had this little kind of makeshift garage office off to the side of his house. And I built this product called the Rapid Muscle System. And I learned everything. I learned about funnels and emails and active campaign and everything it takes to like build an online business that a lot of people take for granted. Right. And so over this year, I'm learning a ton, but I'm not making any money. I'm making nothing and I'm still living at home at my parents' place. So about a year and a half that goes by and I've learned a ton and this was all leading to something. And this is why I think it made it so special. But I was talking to my mentor, said, hey, look, I'm 23. Like I'm living at home still. I feel like a loser. Like, let me kind of spread my wings. I'm going to move. Right. So I go move and I get a very terrible apartment. I had a terrible car and I keep trying to build this business and it's not going anywhere. During that time, I'm doing door-to-door sales and I'm a server. And I'm thinking, okay, the business isn't working because I'm not making money, which was totally not true. But that's what I told myself. So finally at 25, I see an ad on Facebook and I had really no social media presence at that point because I didn't understand social media. And I even thought, why do people waste all this time posting on Facebook? And I think if I didn't have a business, I might not be that active. That was really kind of the reason that got me on there. But I see an ad and it's how to build an online fitness company. And I've been in fitness my whole life. And I was trying to build this fitness business. I mean, it's perfect. So I remember I got on the phone and I paid him everything I had. I had $2,000 to my name and I got a credit card and I paid the rest of the $3,000. And I remember getting in there and they just basically said, hey, charge more. And I was charging $47. They said, charge more. And that week I made $10,000. And then I moved home and then I did $1 million that year. And I remember it was actually so surreal because all those things I had done for those last 2-3 years actually led me to that moment, right? Where a lot of people, they don't see that. So most people, when they actually hear my story, most people just know about 0 to $1 million in a year.
Right.
But those first 2-3 years I actually made no money. And that was such a surreal moment for me because I remember when it finally took off, I was like, that's why I did door-to-door sales. That's why I had to learn those things. Cause finally when the moment arrived, I was ready. I think the next year after that was extreme. That was probably the most insane year of my life. I think it was 2018, 2019. I went 1 to 10 million. And that was a crazy year because what happened is because I had done $1 million in a fitness company, I think the ClickFunnels community really picked up on that because it's a lot of business coaches, right? So everyone's like, oh, he's a business coaching business, whatever. But because it was a fitness company, everyone, including tons of trainers, I had maybe a list of 15 to 20 trainers that had messaged me and said, hey, I'll pay you 10 to 15 G's to coach me. And I was like, hey, dude, to be honest, I've had really bad experiences with coaches. Like, I don't like business coaches. I don't want to be a business coach. Like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
But I was, 25 at the time and, $200,000 at 25 sounds pretty good. And so I started doing it and then that business just completely exploded. And then the next year, because I'd done so well with that, it kind of went into the next stratosphere of, okay, well, now we're going to help people outside of fitness. So now I'd say my company is, half trainers, half general business owners, people who are not in fitness. But I think I sacrificed, I don't know, it's funny because I did sacrifice a lot. I gave up friends. I gave up dating. I gave up partying. I gave up a lot of things. I gave up my health in some degree. I wasn't eating healthy at times. You get super stressed out. You just want to eat a bunch of like ice cream and whatever else. You shouldn't, but you're like, what, forget it. I just worked 12 hours. I'm going to eat it. And so I did give up a lot. And then when I finally got there, I started questioning if what I gave up was worth it. And then, also depending who you're around, people put ideas in your head. So that's why they talk about who you're around is so important because those ideas, those things people say become your thoughts.
Yeah.
And then as I went through that whole journey and I came back to it, I really do enjoy my work. Like I enjoy the push. Like today's been extremely busy and kind of stressful. And I've been I got here a little late and nobody knows that and they do now, but like I enjoy the push. I enjoy the grind because it's in the pursuit of just being the best I can be. And to be quite honest, when I actually feel at my best is when I know I'm trying to be the best I can be in all categories in life. And I'll never get there, but it's just being in that pursuit. And I was just telling you, I traveled the world the last 6 months and I didn't have to do anything. Every day I got to wake up and just think about me and kind of be selfish. And when I got to the end of that and I got back and I started working, it felt completely different. I don't think I realized how miserable I was not working. And I'm not saying work is everything, but I do think a big part of life is, yes, you need to spend time with family, loved ones, but I think a big part of life is pursuing something, having a passion for something. And it doesn't necessarily matter, right? I don't think at the end of the day, when I die, many people won't know me, they won't remember me, but I think it's what I'm going to remember about my journey and myself.
Yeah.
So I'm in a much better place now, but I did sacrifice a lot. I mean, I sacrificed everything. I think the 0 to 1 and 1 to 10, I sacrificed absolutely everything. All I did was work was 7 days a week. I didn't do anything else. I lost probably a lot of relationships because not on purpose. I think this is the one thing people don't understand is they're like, well, you make time for the stuff that's important for you, et cetera. And to a degree, yes, but you are so busy and you have so much on your plate that you can't, weeks will go by and you just, you can't even remember who you've spoken to. And so you do have to be a little more intentional, but I did give up a lot. Yeah. I absolutely did.
Yeah. I think what you said about as human beings, like we're built to grow. Someone in my coaching program recently we were talking about like, even the word growth and like, is it okay to like constantly be in pursuit of more? Like, when are you ever satisfied basically? Yeah. And I was actually talking to my therapist about this because I've always been very performance driven individual,
Same.
high achieving. Like I like to be the best. I like to very competitive. And I've had to integrate those parts of me as I've kind of done more work on myself. It's like, is this really my ego driving me? Or is this like a deeper, like, why am I always in the pursuit of more, better? And we were having this conversation and what I've come to realize is that like, actually it's our nature to grow. Like our cells generate and like create new cells. And like, even if I stopped pursuing everything externally, like my body is meant to evolve and grow and develop and make progress. Like inherently it's in my DNA. Internally, it's in my cells. It's built into my nature. So I realized that even if I stopped doing like accomplishing things, I was like, would I still grow as an individual? And that helped me kind of take the pressure off of always having to climb the next like rung on the ladder and realize, oh, this is just, it's natural for me to grow. It's natural. And I think we need to have something like what we call it, the game of life and how to play it around here. It's like, we need a goal line to move towards, and we need a vision of where we're headed, but it's like life's like a bicycle. If you're not moving in a direction and you just stop, you kind of fall over. And sort of for you, what I hear in that is like, you took that 6 months off for whatever reason, the momentum stopped in your business because you stopped working on it. And there's kind of this, now I feel really wobbly and uncertain, or like, I feel like I'm going to fall over because I'm not moving in any direction towards something. And so I like really relate to that. And I think that's one of the reasons I impart on like our audience and tell people like, you need to have something that's whether it's in your nutrition, in your physical health, in your business, in some area, like something you're working towards, because that momentum is real. Like positive momentum is really real and negative momentum is really real as well.
Well, and I think, something that was interesting to me is sometimes when things get hard and they feel like they've been hard for a long time, I'll have thoughts of, man, I why am I even doing this? Or, maybe I should just take a break. And I've taken these long breaks, and a lot of time I just need a couple of days off. Like I just need like a day off to like rest, maybe sleep a little longer. You probably just got burned out, but something that's really helped me, especially as I've gotten back, is anytime things get difficult, I think a lot of times we complain about it. And I noticed I was doing that a lot. Even though I've done hard stuff, I go through it, but I complain and, this and that and this employee and et cetera. But a thought that's really helped me is that, I really do want to live an extraordinary life. I want to, when I die, I want to look back and really be proud of what I've done. And that the requirement for that is hard stuff. Like it's to do hard things. And so I think the irony is we're constantly wanting life to be easier, but by definition, if your life is extraordinary, it means you've done things that other people haven't done, which means it must be hard. Because if everyone can do it, that automatically means it's ordinary. It means it's easy. So I think a lot of it's a perspective. Totally. It's, if you go in a room and, one person hates people and they think that all the time, one person loves people, they're experiencing the same thing, but they have a totally different outcome. And I like, even in basketball, if this guy loves basketball and this girl doesn't, they watch the exact same thing, but they have a totally different experience. And that's been very interesting for me to kind of get deeper on as I've matured and gotten a little older. I still have a lot of maturing to do, but as I've gotten older, I've really noticed it's that saying, right? It's not what happens to you. It's more how you react. And I think the same thing goes is, kind of embracing those hard things and difficult things and taking them on the chin and understanding that's going to get you to your goal.
For sure.
It is a completely different experience than, woe is me and why is this happening to me, which is what most people do.
Yeah. And I also, and just like hearing your story of like, I'm hearing this transition or this like maturation process of moving from something as like about me and like a chip on your shoulder, like I'm going to prove to myself I can do this, or prove to other people, like I'm going to get to this point. And then now coming back from like a real genuine place of service. Like I just want to be of service. And one of my, a good dear friend of mine, Roy Vaden, says, exploit your uniqueness in the service of others. Like each of us have a unique contribution, like a unique spark, something that we're naturally good at. And you, like your success in a large part has come from you continually to pursue the things you're good at, naturally good at and gifted at. And then you realize, okay, I really can help people transform their body. And now I really can help people transform their business. And I'm just going to continue to lean into this thing that I'm really good at. It's like, and if I do it from a place of service and I enjoy the process of giving what I know away, like it comes back to me so much more rapidly. And that's a perspective and a lens that I think not everybody sees the world through. But when you do, when you put on those kind of glasses and see the world through that perspective, you kind of shift out of the scarcity mentality of like, let me keep and hoard everything to myself. Yeah. And I don't want them to know my secrets. I don't know what's working for me because they'll get an upper hand, they'll get the edge, and I want to be the best. Now it's like, how do I share all of this information with everybody? I
don't know where I said this, but I said one time, I said, I feel bad for poor people because they go their whole lives thinking money will make them happy. And I think the irony is once you make a lot of money, it's actually a blessing. I wish most people could feel what it's like, because once you get there and you realize the money doesn't make you happy, it's a real mind fuck. Mm-hmm. It really makes you think deeper. And then going back to what you said, a lot of people are very selfish in the beginning. I know I was. I mean, all I wanted to do was make a ton of money. And so it was always about me. Well,
because we're trying to get out of our pain. We've got a pain and we're motivated by that.
And it can get you, I think, to a certain point. But I think the irony now is that what I've realized is that the more that you can genuinely put other people first, that's the hardest part, is constantly thinking about others, because it's just by nature. We're so selfish. We're always thinking about me. Even like certain things that people have pointed out, like just small things. Just super small things. Like let's say the Uber driver takes the wrong turn. I'm like, oh my gosh, what an idiot. And I just think it. I don't say it. I don't say anything to him. It's just these thoughts. And it's kind of turning that around and being more empathetic towards people to the point where if they feel that, what happens is that there's a book I read. It was by the Arbinger Institute. I forget the name, but it's like leadership or something. But it talks about in the box and out of the box. And long story short, when they're talking about being in the box, it's very kind of self-centered and you're thinking about yourself. And then the irony is when you're doing that, any outcome you're looking to get won't work because it's coming, like people can feel that versus, when you're being empathetic. And what I've noticed is that the more I think about others, the irony is that I get more of those selfish things I want, but the irony with that too is you'll get all the things you want, but you won't even want them because you'll realize it's not that important. And it's kind of interesting how life turns out, but it almost feels like this little, like paradox or game that we think like I need to get all these things and all this money. But as we serve others, you actually realize that's where a lot of joy comes from. And that's kind of the game. And then you get all these things anyways. Yep. You know, it's just that they don't mean as much, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of the journey I've been on over the last, I'd say like 5-6 years.
Yeah, that's so good. Now, how do you think what we were just talking about in terms of being of service, how do you think that translates to sales? Because there's, if people are out there trying to sell their service or sell their product and they're trying to push it and like, you need this versus like, let me sit down. I used to be in outside sales before I started my own business. And, for me, when I would go in and start a relationship with somebody, it wasn't necessarily just to like push a product or push a service. It was like, let me really get to know your needs and your desires. And let me even see if I'm the right person to be able to help you with that versus like, I'm trying to fit around, I'm a round peg and you might be a square hole and I'm going to jam this down your throat whether you want it or not. So how do you feel like this, how this correlates to sales?
Yeah, I just do so much work in sales and I've worked with so many sales reps that, a lot of people, they don't understand that it's genuinely just trying to understand their situation and trying to find the solution. And then honestly, genuinely not caring. The easiest way to describe sales is if someone told you they had a terminal illness and you were their friend, how would you handle that situation? And you would probably say, okay, well, like, what's going on? Like, how long do you have? Like, what do you want the outcome to be? That's how sales calls should sound. But what happens a lot of times is, again, they're so intent on pushing the sell through that the more they push, the less likely it is to go through. And I think it's hard. I think it's something that it does take time to learn. It can take reps. I know for me, something that really blessed me was I did door-to-door sales for 9 months, 6 days a week, about 12 hours a day, including drive time. And so when I got into online sales, I couldn't believe people actually wanted what I had to sell because I was so used to people, you know, I was selling alarms that nobody wanted. But yeah, that genuinely is the point of the call, is to try to understand their situation and just give them a solution that fits. And yes, there's a couple sales tricks and tactics, but overall, I think it's genuinely just trying to understand the situation and provide the solution. Where people fail is they just don't genuinely understand the situation, right? Or they don't try to, or they don't genuinely understand what the right solution is. And so, yeah, part of it could be, you know, like it's like learning the product, learning the customer, of course, but if you just try to serve, and then obviously if you believe in what you're selling, that's a big one. The CEOs are usually the most convicted because the CEOs built the company.
Sure.
So they believe in the product the most, right? But it's really those two things. And I know for me too, you know, when I was broke, it was a lot harder to kind of get me to understand that because I just wanted the sales so bad. But now that I've made a lot of money, it's very easy to detach from the sale, which makes me even better at sales, ironically, because I'm so detached and they feel that, I mean, I'll get to the end. I mean, whatever you want to do is totally fine. Like, this is my suggestion, but you can do whatever you want. And it's ironic, but you'll get more sales that way than trying to like slam it through with some type of special sales tactic.
Yeah, definitely. Because you've worked with so many online business owners and entrepreneurs, and you've interviewed like 30 plus millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what do you think are the biggest mistakes business owners, online business owners are making, and where you see that they're kind of like going wrong and things that they can do better?
So, well, it just depends like what game you're trying to play. So you mentioned those 30 interviews I had. I should have recorded them. That was very dumb on my part. I regret it greatly, but the big takeaway I got from those 30 interviews, if I took everything and, you know, put it on, you know, like a diagram and saw all the close dots, there were really three things that stood out. Most of the billionaires who bootstrapped had an internet marketing background, which I thought was very interesting because a lot of times it gets more flack. I think as I've gotten older, I've noticed a lot of people, you know, it's not bad. It's just, it kind of gets like a scammy connotation just because anyone can do it. So there's a lot of crap that comes through the industry. But that was interesting. The second thing was that it was usually high ticket, right? Which, you know, we know how to do high ticket. That's what I've done a ton of. And then the third one was that it was very easy to low fulfillment. And so going back to your question, if you're trying to build a coaching business, there's no way around easy fulfillment. Like, there is going to be some level of fulfillment. Maybe you could do group, but ultimately there's going to be probably higher levels of fulfillment, right? I think the biggest issue if you're trying to build that type of business is just most people are just not very good at sales. They're just not good. It's very bad. They don't understand. It's like, you know, every guy you meet probably thinks he's very good with women, and we know that's not true, right? And so it's in that same thing where you can't really tell them that, and they have to take some of their lumps. I think that's the biggest one. They don't know how to message well. They don't know how to do sales calls, and they just have to go through that. I think outside of that, if you're trying to build bigger companies, right? So I have ambitions of, you know, a 9 or 10 figure exit. The thing I realized was that at the end of the day, I'm in the wrong vehicle for that, right? And so I built my company almost about $2 million a month. And what I started realizing is I'd have to put in 100% more effort for about 10% more results. And there's only so much you can do. I'm like, I'm completely maxed out. I'm spending, you know, hundreds, you know, millions of dollars on ads, about $500,000 a month. And I have 100 staff and all these things. And I started realizing, I said, you know, the issue with that. And again, when I say issue, you know, most people are like 2 million a month, I'm happy with. So for those people, like, it's a great model and you can get a lot of freedom and autonomy and time. But if you're trying to go outside that, the thing I realized was that I can't possibly scale this to 9 figures because I cannot get the same result across the board. And what I mean is, if John's a 5 and Sally's a 1 and Tim's a 10, they'll get the same program, but they all get different results because of their skill level. And so the key to really building a massive business, and this is the hard part, is what can you build that is easy to zero fulfillment, but you can still sell it for a ton of money. And that is the question that after all those interviews, I realized that's what they'd figured out.
Got it.
And so that's kind of two sides of the coin there, you know, depending on who's listening to this, but, that's kind of my takeaway on like both sides. Yeah.
So for those who are listening to already, like in this audience, they're probably on the first side of that, right?
Correct. 100%.
They've got a service-based business. They're trying to start, whether it's coaching or health coaching, whatever it is. And even I'll just talk frankly about my own business. Yeah. Everything I've built has been 100% organic. I have never run one ad, which is crazy, ever.
Which is actually harder.
So, so what do you say to someone like me who I've done well for myself. I also know I'm leaving a ton of money on the table. There's so many places I could be going and things I could be doing, but you don't know what you don't know. What do you say to somebody like me who's never even thought about paid traffic?
Yeah. Well, the good news is you've done a harder thing. It's actually harder to build an organic audience than it is to run paid traffic, in my opinion, because, man, it's just hard to capture that audience attention. And it's great because if you look at a lot of coaching companies, the biggest expense for my company, I'd say about 60% of my expense is ads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. So if you get all that back, that's pure profit. I think the biggest thing is that people don't really understand how ads work. So most people think, okay, I'm going to run an ad. They'll usually hire an agency and they're like, okay, if I run this ad, people will click it and X amount of people will buy, and they kind of cross their fingers and pray that it will work. That's just not how ads work at all. The thing is you're sending it to someone who has no idea who you are, who maybe clicks on it, and then that's where the work begins. It's not the funnel, it's not the ad, it's not the copy, it's the follow-up. And so what really made me successful is that was part of why I hated coaches, because when I started hiring coaches, and I was definitely way too hard on people at that time. Now that I've also been on the other side, I'm like, okay, it's usually in the middle, as every story is, right? The truth is somewhere in the middle. But I was trying to run these perfect webinars, right? Especially Russell Brunson. Like, I actually was spending time with him in like Africa this year for like 9 hours and got to dive deep in a bunch of stuff. But the issue is that I would run the ad and then just kind of, all right, I hope they book calls. I hope they book calls, which is what 90% of people do. And they don't understand that it's really in the follow-up. So what changed for me personally is as soon as I got upset enough, this was like my 5th coach. I spent 40 grand on ads, 50K on coaches. I was just working all the time. And I said, forget this. I'm just going to message every lead. And I had hundreds of leads, and I started DMing each lead one-on-one all the way through. And I think I made $30,000 that week off $3,000 of ad spend. And that's when it clicked. And I said, I figured it out. And so the issue with that is, again, most people are looking for an easy route, right? They think, oh, I have a coaching business. I'll run some ads. It's really easy. I'll do a course.
And that's the top of the funnel. You're getting eyes on your stuff. But then it's like, how do I?
Yeah. But even right now, I mean, for anyone who's in the coaching industry right now, I've been in the game for the last 6 years. I think every company that I felt like I was a competitor to that was doing 8 figures a year, all of them are either out of business or shut down except one, as far as I'm aware. That's at that level. Yeah. And the reason is, like, it's gotten more competitive. It's gotten harder and harder. And right now it kind of feels like it's getting squeezed a little bit, where there's a lot of people coming in, and there's so many options, but people are being more savvy. It's not like it was 6 years ago where everyone just was barely doing it. Yep. And so what's happening is you're having to get better and better and better at those skills and following up. And so I think the thing for me is, you scale something unscalable. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to DM every person. I do have some portfolio companies where they don't have to do that. But if you think about it, if I get 20,000 leads a month and we have, let's say, 10 DMs per lead, that's 200,000 a month. There's very few people that can copy that model. And so, like everything in life, as boring as it sounds, are you willing to do what it takes? And I think people are a little naive on what it takes to be successful. And they always, what you see is not what you get. It's what they want you to see. So a lot of ads are, oh yeah, do this and don't take sales calls and don't message anyone and it automatically works. But that's not usually how it goes. And those people are typically more skilled than you. So if someone's been a marketer for 20 years, you can't compare yourself to Russell Brunson. Like, he's better than you. So let's not play that game. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost, especially like if I took my average client, if I took a beginner, they just have very low skill. They don't understand. They don't know what they don't know. And so you mix that together. It's a very bad combination. And so it's just really, a lot of them need to build skills and understand that it's not a perfect funnel. It's not a perfect webinar. It's not a perfect video. It's typically following up. So it's the calls, it's the messages, it's that extra time and effort that most people, they just don't want to do.
So when someone hires you to work with you, do you have like a program for those do you only work with high level people who've been in the game for a while, or do you work with beginners like that?
No, we definitely do both. Okay. So typically for most beginners, their biggest issue is they don't have any cash. And then they just paid us a bunch of cash. Right. So the first thing we have to do is get them a couple easy wins organically. And once they have that, my main goal is to move it into ads. the reason for that is, it's funny you say, like, I haven't done ads, but what you've done is actually harder because they have to have the personality for it. They have to have the energy for it. Some people, no matter what you do, they're not going to be good on camera. Right. And so for me, what I'm trying to do is, okay, how can I take a person who has no following, no skill, very little experience, and still get them a result? And typically it's get them a little cash, couple quick wins, put that into a paid system, and then show them a proper follow-up process. And it's just, there's a lot that goes into that, right? I mean, there's
developing
building websites,
offer.
Building websites, the offer, the pixels, how to message. Like, I think a big thing that's ironic is just people's lack of ability for sales. They don't understand when they're sending DMs, even what to say. And I'll read a message and go, why did you say that? They're like, oh, XYZ. Like, that's weird. That's like, you can't say that. And I just think it's a lot of lack of awareness. And the only way to really get it is either my best clients typically have some type of background in sales, almost always. So some of my best clients who come in, they build multi-million-dollar companies. They almost always come from a corporate job or sales or marketing because they understand how to talk to people. So when all you're really teaching them is systems, but a lot of people, they just don't have the skill. And I wish there was an easy way around it, but there's usually not. You just have to learn.
Of course. So the people that come to you, do they already have an offer, or is that something that you teach people?
We can help with it. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we've helped beginners, and we have 2 different programs in like my main company, and it's like, one's called Next Level, one's called Elite CEOs. And we do help beginners, but I mean, it's always easier to help someone who's more experienced. Of course, there's just less of them.
Yeah.
And also I will say the one downside of ads is that because you have ad costs, you can't be quite as picky with the clients you take after a certain point, because organically you can, because if you're getting free traffic, you can say, no, yes, no, that's one of the benefits. But with ads, if you're paying, let's say you're spending, 20 grand a month, you have to make at least 20 grand a month. So what happens is sometimes you're going to let people in, or your sales team lets people in that maybe are not the most ideal person. And that's always the battle, because sales guys just want to push everyone through, and the fulfillment team is like, only push these people through. And so it can create some conflict, but it's a delicate balance, 100%.
Of course. I'm curious, like, what do you think are the key essentials of a good online offer?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
what makes it a good
offer? Had his book come out recently, and I know everyone was doing that, but I think it was funny when his book came out, because I think I was naturally doing a lot of those things. And so I'll tell you one of my clients' best offers, one of the best offers I've seen, and it really hits those things on the head. Really, if you look at like $100 million offers, right? And I'll just use that as the example. The biggest things he was hitting on is you get a really fast result, and it's really easy to do. And that's one of I think that's the hardest thing in coaching a lot of times, is because it takes effort by nature, right? Or like fat loss, if you have to work out.
Yeah.
That's why people fail, because they have to put an effort. And that's why if you can make it effortless, it's easy. So one of the best, I think most people, they struggle to just have an offer that's even good. So for example, health, wealth, and relationships is typically where they should stick, because everyone wants those things.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll see people and they want to be the next Tony Robbins, and I'm like, you don't have a brand. You're not well known. And then the way you explain it, no one understands, right? It has to be very straightforward language where the result is very easy. So, wealth is, I will help you make more money with XYZ. That's straightforward. Relationships, I'll help you get X amount of dates. Straightforward. Health, lose amount of weight. I think, like, ironically, a lot of offers I see struggle the most for beginners is usually like some type of mindset, because not because it's mindset, it's because they can't explain it in a way people understand. Right. So they're using a lot of verbiage.
It's vague.
It's or complex or like, okay. And like, what does that mean? Plus they don't know you. So that's usually, I would say, the biggest issue with the offer is that they're not doing that. Outside of that, the next thing is just how easy can you make it? So one of my best offers of a client I've ever had is, he ethically and legally, he doesn't guarantee it, but he essentially can get almost all of his clients green cards. Some type of strategy he does, he basically can get them green cards. And there's a lot of people who want green cards. So I'm telling you, his application says something like, it's $15,000. Can you pay it? And they get on the sales call, and it's like not a really good sales call, to be honest with you. And they just pay it. And that was like that goes back towards more of those convos I have with those billionaires where you just make it so good that your team just doesn't even have to be that great. And that's what can really just blow up in scale. Yep. Because I would say like, it's harder to convince someone, like even what I've been doing the last 6 years, like it's a harder conversation in sale to say, hey, look, like we can help you build this business, but you're gonna have to put in work and it's gonna take time and you're not gonna know these things, but we'll help you. It's a harder sell than saying, hey, just do X, Y, Z and you'll get a green card. And I'm not saying it's easy. There are some things they have to do, but the need is so high and it's so, such a guarantee where like, I've never seen people just swipe their credit card so easy. I actually watched the sales call and I was perplexed at what I was watching. So it'll be those two things. It's just, they don't present it in the right way. And then, it's also just how easy can they make it so it's easier to sell, right? Because if you're not a good salesperson, but you have a great offer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Your lack of ability to sell is not going to be the barrier for entry for them to actually say yes, because the offer is that good.
Right. If you saw this guy, I'm telling you, he's not a sales guy. Like, I'll just leave it at that. Like, if you heard him and you listened to him, he's just not a sales guy.
Yeah, but no one else is offering what he's offering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think he's done all organically like 1.5 million in like less than a year. And he's not like there's no following. There's nothing. I've just never seen anything like it. And
so he's identified a need in the market.
A massive need.
Absolutely.
And it's not going anywhere. And then on top of that, I think it's something with Google employees only. So they're all making, $100,000, $300,000.
So they have the budget.
Yeah, they have the budget. It's crazy. Amazing. Yeah.
You mentioned this, that a couple years ago, there were several players in your field, like other competitors, and there are a lot. And now that you're on the business side, like business coaching side, there are a lot of business coaches out there, right? So many. And people listening to this, they're probably like, either they've hired a business coach before, they've been in masterminds, they're considering it right now, whatever. I'm curious, like, what do you think you uniquely do differently than other business coaches out there?
Well, if I actually was to take a sales call with someone, there's really only 3 things I tell them to look at. So usually on a call, I'll break down maybe 2 strategies we do that's a little different. But ultimately I say, look, if you were in a room with 10 people, right, gun to your head, you have to get results in 30 days. There's 10 business coaches. What would you look at? They're like, I don't know. I say, okay, experience. Like who's done it the longest and who's made the most money.
Right.
That would probably be important to you, right?
Completely.
Number 2 is specificity. You wouldn't hire Michael Jordan to teach you tennis, and you wouldn't hire, Roger Federer to teach you basketball. But people do it all the time. Like, oh, well, I built a multi-million-dollar real estate company. It's like, yeah, but they do beauty products. Like, you know nothing about makeup, my guy. It doesn't mean they can't help, but it's less likely.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is just level of attention. And so I just say, look, no matter what you do with the sales calls, I always laugh when people want to take 100 sales calls. I say, what do you think the sales reps are going to say? His job is to sell you. Oh yeah, well I wanted to hear, there's nothing they're going to say. So I decide who I'm going to work with before I even take a call. Half the time I just message them and say, yo, send me an invoice. Because it doesn't really matter what their sales rep says, because at the end of the day, I won't know until I'm in the program. But if they look at those 3 things, that's usually the biggest thing, because realistically, like a lot of them don't know what they don't know anyways.
Of course.
So I say, instead of you trying to get on a call and try to decipher what they're saying and see if they're a good guy or a good sales rep or whatever, just look at those 3 things. And what I've found is that if I do that 80% of the time, it's a great decision. Every time I've gone away from that where I knew better and I said, well, they're promising this, but they don't seem to have as much experience, or they're a smaller company. It's not bad. It's just, you have to understand that as a company gets bigger or has more specificity, they're going to go through more things, which gives you an edge when they're helping you because they've experienced it. That's the entire point of a coach. If they haven't had that experience, then what's the point of you hiring them? So I think it's really those 3 things. I mean, there's different strategies we do. I think, to your question, the main one is that, I don't know any other company besides mine that is doing like 200,000 messages a month. It's insane. I have a whole staff that's just like dedicated to just like hammering that.
Wow.
But outside of that, and we go a lot into that, but outside of that, I just break it down and say, look, like this is the results. Make your decision off that. And it's unbiased because it's just numbers. And I'm a logical guy. So maybe, if I'm talking to someone less logical, I'll change the tune a little bit. But I think ultimately that's the easiest way to decide, because I think bringing emotions into business type decisions, it's not it's not emotional. Business is numbers.
Yeah.
It's math.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and then the next piece of that is once you've got those things on lock, in order to scale and do 200,000 messages or something a month, just, you have to have a staff. You
100%.
have to have people on board. So do you have any tips for hiring well?
Oh yeah, I definitely have a lot of tips from doing it wrong. So the first thing is, make sure when you are hiring, you have some type of application on the front end. And there's really two things I'm looking for. The biggest thing for hiring is if you have the budget, hire for experience over like potential. Potential just doesn't matter, right? It's like in the beginning of your business, you're hiring people for potential because you're broke. Once you have money, you need to hire for experience because it makes everything easier because you're not constantly having to manage and go over things and, keep talking to them. You can put that energy elsewhere.
Yeah.
So if you have to pay $3,000 more a month to get a better candidate, it's worth it. In terms of looking for those candidates, what I do is I'll have a questionnaire. I like LinkedIn a lot. There's other ways to do it, but I really like LinkedIn over Indeed. And then I'm always looking for experience. So relative experience. If you're looking for a business coach to come coach your clients, you're not looking for someone who's coached, in these big public companies and stuff. You want someone who's niched down, possibly own their own business. More than likely, that's the best thing. And then I usually will look at some type of audio. I don't know what it is, but you can just listen to some people and you'll know right away, especially sales reps. Sales reps, it's really easy. Once I do that, depending on if it's let's say it is a sales rep, I'll actually send them calls and a script and give them a practice call before I'll even interview them. Because why am I going to waste time training someone who doesn't even sound good? The goal is find a 7 and make them a 10, not find a 3 and try to make them a 5. That doesn't help you. Once I'm on the interview, what I typically am doing though is I'll just say, here's company values, here's the mission, here's the expectations of the role. And then I start asking them about their experience. And what I'm usually doing is I'm asking questions that are not yes or no. I'm asking questions that are broad and I know what I want the answer to be to see what they say. So for example, if I have a coach, I'll say, cool. So, what softwares, if I got you on Zoom, you could actually show me what to use and see what they say. And then I'll actually later check them on a second interview and say, okay, those softwares you talked about, show me. Because you're not paying to teach someone something. You're paying for their current skills and brain. You're seeing how they can think.
Yep.
For sales reps, that's how I usually test them out. As I say, here's a practice call, let's see. And I see if that call is even good before I'll even spend any time with them. I think another question, company mission, culture, expectations, then I'll ask them, their job roles or what they've done. And then I also like to ask, what's most important to you in a company? And I tell them I'm not looking for a BS answer. Do you like cupcakes every weekend? Do you want more days off? What do you care about? And I'm looking for a culture fit. And for my team, what I found that works the best is it's finding people who genuinely want to be good at their job or they genuinely want to be the best they can be. Clock in, clock out mentality is not for my company. And I tell people that. I say, look, it's not bad if that's what you want. It's just not a fit here. And you'll get kind of pushed out. Another thing I would do is I let them know, hey, I'll hire for culture over skill. I prefer both. But if you hire for skill over culture, an example is you bring on a sales rep. He's the best on the team. He's not coming to calls anymore. He's not paying attention. He's not filling out sheets. The other guys start doing it. All of a sudden, they're not as good. So now you have a big problem because your less experienced guys are not doing the little things. They get worse. It just creates massive drop off.
Cancer that just
so bad.
Spreads.
It's so bad. So you want to find both, but I'd hire for culture over skill if you have to choose. And then if you have someone on your team doing the hiring, always, as a CEO, you should always do the final interview. You should sign off on every person because it is such a pain in the butt to bring someone on. They're not as good or they should have never been hired on. And I think be patient. Like a lot of times as businesses are growing, what's happening is you're feeling a lot of strain. And so you rush the hiring process because you're I just need someone. But what ends up happening when you do that is you just waste more time because they come in, they're not as good. You have to spend more time babysitting them. Then you fire them. So right now we're looking for a position and I think we're 300 applications in. We've been 3-4 months in. I'm just I don't care. I'm waiting for the perfect fit. And it's worth it to do it that way because it's just so much easier to get someone who has that experience and skill and they can kind of run on their own versus constantly trying to, help people. And that's also why your offer matters because the better your offer is, the bigger the opportunity, the higher the level the people want to work with you because and you can pay them more, right? And the more you can pay people, typically the better the talent.
Yeah, definitely. All of that is you just gave basically a little masterclass in how to hire sales reps, which is amazing.
There's like a whole script. I wish I could drop here, but it's like, I've hired so many people.
Yeah.
It's just, I've learned exactly what not to do.
How many people are on your team now?
Right now we're like 60 something.
Wow.
We had as high as 100 at one point, but it was just, we got fat. You know, you have tons of margin. You're just like, oh, hire this, hire that. Well, then, you know, thinking that's going to fix issues, but a lot of times it doesn't. So we're leaner now, and we're smaller now. I think it's like the sweet spot for us. Like, I think around like 60 people is good, for my size, but I mean, it's still a lot of people.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
It's still a lot of people. And so you have to have really good managers. You have to have a really good team. And I would say like the most important thing as CEO is like, as you're building your team, make sure that, you know, you occasionally audit people, like follow them around for a couple of days and you'll think, I don't have time for this, but you'll see all these holes in your employees' calendars and things they're doing that they shouldn't. And ultimately, like, that's the CEO's job. Your job is to assemble a team to do the work. You're not really supposed to do the work. Your job is to assemble the team. And that's something that took me years to learn.
Yeah.
Like just there's so many lessons, but yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. I know a couple of years ago you wrote a book called Infinite Income.
Yeah.
So I want people to know about that in case they want to go get that book and what they can expect from it.
Well, being brutally honest, I wish now in hindsight I'd spent more time on it.
Really?
I mean, I did write it, but I think I just made it as, you know, hey, I'm going to make this book and, you know, people can find it. I'm good friends with Alex and, you know, he's like, yeah, I did like 19 revisions on my last book and it took me 2 years. And I'm like, and he's like, that's why it's so good. I'm like, okay, that's a fair point. You know, he's like,
a few more revisions.
Like, it's funny because I'll text him and say, you know, why is your book so good? And he's like, 2 years, 19 revisions, send. That's all he says. And I'm
Maybe
like,
it's apply the patience with the hiring process to the writing process.
It's just good things, like really good things. And he said it before and it's so true. Like, to go from good to great, it's like 100% more effort for, you know, 10% more results. And like, so an analogy could be an Olympic sprinter. You want to go from a 10-2 to a 10 flat. The amount of effort to do that is astronomical. But if you're running a 30-second 100 meter to go to 15, oh, wow, he cut his time in half. But I mean, dude, you're so slow. Yeah. Right. And so anyways, with the book though, I did get through it. It talks about my story and I tried to make it also practical because I hate books where it's just all theory. Yeah. So I was like, hey, I did this and this is how I did it. Yeah. But in hindsight, I wish I had taken more time because if I had, I probably would have had links to videos and, you know, like courses and stuff that I just, at the time, I didn't think of that. I don't know why. It seems so obvious now. But at the very least, like, I think what people will appreciate is I go through and I just tell my story A to Z. And so part of it is kind of give people some hope. Like people who are beginners to go, wow, like Tanner came from this. Because I was there. I talked to a guy today. He had $600 to his name. And I remember I said, dude, I know exactly where you're at. And he's 22. And I was like, I remember this moment exactly. This is, 9 years ago. I was exactly where you were. And so there's that part. And then the other part is just giving someone practical steps. Because the thing that was frustrating for me is I would have licked the floor if I knew it would have worked. I think I'm rare in that standpoint, but I just didn't know what to do. And so I just wanted to make something or write something where it just gave people at least a basic path to follow.
Absolutely.
Because for me, what was ironic is after 3 years of trial and error, I just realized that all I had to do was message a few people and get them on a call and I would have made millions of dollars. And I didn't think it was that easy. I thought it was really more complex than that. And I think a lot of people do that. Yeah, no. And I think that's important to share all of that. Like it gives people perspective, even though you've done so much in so many ways. It also is beautiful to see that like, in certain aspects of your life or your business, you're like, I'm still learning and I'm still growing. So who knows, you might put out 10 more books in the future that are just like freaking off the charts, but it's helpful to see the come up, you know what I mean? And hear your story. And I think there's nothing more valuable than when somebody can have some kind of roadmap for themselves and a framework that they can apply. Because I always say this all the time, like knowledge is not power. Knowledge is not power. People say it all. They're like, oh, I just need to acquire more knowledge. I'm like, no, you need to apply what you know. It only becomes power when you apply it and you use it. And you learn as you apply it. That's the thing. Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're trying to learn how to swim, I promise if you just jump in the pool, you'll learn a lot more than just reading the books. And I think a lot of people forget that is that and there's no way around the work. I think people think they can read themselves into being good at something. And at some point, you just got to get the reps. Yeah. You just have to take the calls. You got to take your lumps. You're going to make some mistakes. There's that's what makes it fun though. That's what makes it worth it. And that's kind of what I said earlier is you have to go through that. So on the other side, it's like, wow, like this was worth it. If it was so easy, it just wouldn't mean anything.
Yeah, absolutely. No. I think that's a really important piece to like wrap up on, because in the game of life, in coachable, we talk about moving from defense to offense. And when we move to offense and you start to get some momentum, like a big part of just being on that side of the game is just the reps practice. It's just putting in the reps and doing, like, committing to the routine and the structure and the not being rigid, but like we're adaptable and we're flexible and we make adjustments and we see what works and we see what doesn't, we make adjustments. But it's like getting comfortable putting in the reps and everybody's a beginner in the beginning. Everything's hard before it's easy, right? Yes. And so you got to struggle through it a little bit and be willing to be a beginner. But as we wrap up, I want to know kind of what's next for you. What are you excited about? What are you working on? I know you say you've got aspirations for 9-10 figure exit. Like, is there anything that you're currently like working on?
I got something under the table that's not public right now, but it kind of fits that criteria I was talking about earlier with you. And cool. I'm really going to be pushing hard on that. And, like I still have my company right now and it's doing well, but I think that my ultimate goal is like, it's going to stay there and it's going to keep, like we'll keep helping people. And I enjoy it. There's a lot of good that comes out of it. But I think my next bigger opportunity is here. And so I'm working on that kind of quietly behind the scenes. And when the time's right, I'll let everyone know. But exciting. Yeah, I'm just super excited to kind of be back on the saddle. Yeah. I'm getting after it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, whenever the time is right, you'll have to come back out to Vegas 100%. And announce to the world what it is that you've been keeping in secret. But just want to say thank you for coming out. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story and giving people, hope for their journey, because you've done a lot in 6 years. You have a lot to be proud of. And I know the sky's the limit for you. So thanks for coming on. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Tell people where they can find you online and how they can connect with you more. What I'm testing out is like, what would be best is if they see this is to just DM me on Instagram, Tanner.Chidester, and then maybe say Tori. So I know that came from here because one, I like connecting there. As you know, we do a million messages. I'm in there sometimes too, ironically. But that would be the best place to connect is just like shoot me a DM on Instagram and like we'll take it from there. See if I can help. Cool. Well, you heard it here. Go connect with Tanner on Instagram. Send him a DM. Put Tori so he knows that you guys came from the Coachable podcast, and we'll have him back anytime. Until next week, guys, go apply something you heard here. Go be coachable, and we'll see you next week on the Coachable podcast.